Hello, welcome to Move Along Story Time. Today we're going to do the story of Little Red Riding Hood. So clear away a nice open space and get ready to experience the story using your body and your imagination. Let's go. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood. She was getting ready to go and walk through the forest to see her grandmother, whom she loved very, very, very much. She was so excited. Her feet felt like they were hopping. Her fingers felt like they were tingling, and her face was hurting from smiling so big. Ooh, she was so excited. So she decided to pack a picnic to bring to her grandmother. She picked up her picnic basket and she packed delicious items into each one. What do you think this is? It's going in the box. One last thing, what could it be? She rubbed her stomach in anticipation. This was going to be a delicious picnic, she thought. Once she had packed her picnic, she waved goodbye to her mother. Her mother warned her in her strictest mother voice with her pointiest mother finger, "Be careful, do not talk to strangers." Little Red Riding Hood nodded happily, and off she went into the forest. To travel in the forest, did she walk? Did she run? No, she skipped. She skipped and skipped and skipped and skipped and skipped. And she didn't just skip in a straight line. She skipped around some trees and around some more. She skipped, and then she came across a large rock. How could she get over it? She decided to take a big jump. She got ready, and she jumped, and she made it, and she continued to skip. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Little Red Riding Hood, a big, bad wolf was watching her from behind a tree. Standing behind the tree, the wolf peered around the tree. The wolf had a long nose, big ears, and huge claws. The wolf was also hungry, and he rubbed his stomach. He quietly snuck out from behind the tree and slowly snuck behind Little Red Riding Hood. He walked slowly and carefully up on his tiptoes so that she would not hear him as he snuck behind her. Suddenly, Little Red Riding Hood made it to a clearing in the forest. She stopped skipping and she looked around. She was very close to her grandmother's house, but then she heard something, and then she saw the big bad wolf. The big bad wolf smiled, a scary smile with all of his teeth, and he said, "Where are you going?" Little Red Riding Hood did not heed her mother's warning. She smiled and said, "Why, over the creek to my grandmother's house." And off she skipped. She skipped and she skipped and she skipped and she skipped and she skipped. The big bad wolf thought for a second. He thought. He thought. He thought. And then suddenly he had an idea. He would beat her to her grandmother's house. So he ran as fast as he could. He ran around the trees. He jumped over the rocks and ran and ran and ran and made it to her grandmother's house first. He opened the door and walked in, and with his eyes, he saw the grandmother. He quickly, without saying anything, gobbled her up. Hum, nom, 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 nom. And then he put on her pajamas from her closet, put on her nightcap, and got himself into bed and pulled up the covers. And then he waited and waited and waited, when suddenly Little Red Riding Hood came skipping up the path. She knocked, and when she didn't hear anything, she let herself into her grandmother's house. She immediately saw her grandmother in bed and said, "Grandmother, what big eyes you have." The wolf said, "The better to see you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood said, getting a little more scared. Her knees started to shake a little bit. "But Grandmother, what big ears you have." The wolf said, "The better to hear you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood said, getting very scared. Her knees were really starting to shake. Her fingers were starting to shake, and her voice was starting to shake. "What big teeth you have." The wolf leapt from the bed and said, "The better to eat you with, my dear." And the wolf started to chase Little Red Riding Hood around in the house. Meanwhile, outside, a woodsman heard the commotion. He was big and strong. He grabbed his axe and walked towards the grandmother's house. When he entered, he saw the wolf chasing Little Red Riding Hood, and he chased after the wolf. They chased and chased and chased. When he caught up with the wolf, he cut out the grandmother, and the grandmother popped out, but she was covered in stomach stuff. Ew. Ooh. Oh. Little Red Riding Hood was so excited to see her grandmother, and they hugged. And they lived happily